So we wait the top four here. We think we all know the four teams. It's just a matter of where they're at. Florida State, number 4,
Okay.
At 8-0, which again, I just think, I think the committee probably, I don't say prefers, but the brands of beating Notre Dame, beating Penn State, like Ohio State has done, probably weighed a little bit better than that first win over LSU, which it's unfortunate. You schedule tough, but you schedule too early, apparently. So Florida State, number 4, I'm not complaining. I think that's totally fair.
Sure. I mean, you're at this point, it's how do you decide and decipher? And again, whoever 2 and 3 are, two of these teams play each other. So if you win out, you're going to move up one anyway, and you might move up more than that if you play well and start dominating again.
If there's any context that's worth sharing out there, folks, feel free to share it in the comments. We'll pull it up there because we can't hear the actual TV feed. So there might be somebody out there on this panel right now fighting like heck for the Noles. Wow, shocker. Michigan, number 3. Wow.
Okay. All right.
No quality wins, but just absolutely impressive, dominating wins in all of their 8 games. Wonder if the Jim Harbaugh sign stigma, espionage might be weighing on. Whoa, Georgia, number 2. Ohio State. I thought they'd be 3. Those apparently the Notre Dame Penn State games, I think, are just going to weigh really heavy right now because that's 2 big time wins. Everybody in here either has 1, Florida State over LSU, or none, Georgia and Michigan. So there you go. Your top 6, Oregon 6, Washington 5. Your top 4 is Ohio State 1, Georgia 2, Michigan 3. Your Florida State Seminoles, number 4. All right, so Jeff, I trust you've been able to kind of look at the poll and see where everybody sits. Anything catch you by surprise? And ultimately, Florida State being number 4 right now, grand scheme of things, we're not going to talk about what it means, but do you agree with Florida State being deemed maybe the 4th best team in the country right now?
So I think it always gets back to whether or not you're primarily using your eye test or if you're solely looking at resume and how much do you blend the two. Because if you're looking at resume, there's no chance Michigan could be in the top 4. Now, Corey and I agree on this. I think Michigan may very well be the best team in the country, certainly right there with Georgia. I think that they're capable of being that team. But based on their resume, they have no business being in the top 4. None.
Yeah. And the beauty, though, Jeff, as we talked about, is, well, if they win at Penn State and beat Ohio State at home, well, then they will have business in the top 4.
Correct.
And if they don't, they're out of the top 4 anyway.
I don't really worry about it. My main thing tonight that I wanted to see was to ensure that Florida State was ahead of Washington.
Yeah.
Because my fear was that somehow those 2 teams went undefeated, and if we were behind them at the start of this dog and pony show, that we could get screwed somehow and be left out of the playoff. And it's a remote fear. It wasn't anything that was really pressing upon me, but I did want to see that was the case. And so thankfully Florida State was there. I do know this. What's this, the 10th year that they've been doing this? And in the previous 9 years, the only thing that's really mattered is that you are somewhere in the top 6. Because in that time, 30 of the 36 teams who ended up playing in the playoff were in the top 6 upon the first rankings.
Yeah.
So
that's a good little stat bomb.
Well, that's the show prep, Corey. That's just
man. Awesome. That's great, man. I like this, Jeff.
As of right now, if you're one of these guys that are going to hammer a resume, you're going to say, look, Georgia and Michigan probably don't have the resume. Ohio State does. They have a win over Notre Dame and Penn State. So even though I think Georgia would kill Ohio State. I think Michigan's going to beat Ohio State. I like Florida State's chances to beat Ohio State. There's a good chance Oregon would beat Ohio State. We can go on and on and on. But if it's just the resume, Ohio State's got the number 1 resume. They should be number 1.
Isn't it goofy too, Jeff, that it really comes down to one play? If Ohio State doesn't get that yard against Notre Dame, they're not in the they're probably 5th or 6th or 7th, but because they got that 1 yard, they picked up the 4th down or 3rd down, whatever it was, the 4th and 18, and then they got the 1 yard. All of a sudden, now they're deemed the best team in the country. And if not, the margins of error, the margin of error is so slim. The margins are so slim.
And you're absolutely right, especially this season, Corey. That's what makes all this so fun. Florida State's got a legitimate chance to win a national title because there doesn't appear to be a juggernaut. Again, I don't want to match up with Georgia. I think Georgia's better than Florida State. But I'm saying that's
Come and get some, dogs. You don't want none of this. You don't want none of this. You can't handle this smoke.
But I would tell you this. I like Florida State's chances to be in that game and have a chance to win it. I'm not saying it's unwinnable. 2 years ago, I would have told you, oh, no. You want no part of that Georgia team. But that's not this Georgia team. So, I'd be all right with any of these matchups. Some I like more than others. It does work itself out for the most part. And I do think ultimately Florida State's in a good position by being in that top 4. Look, if they go undefeated, and I think they are going to go undefeated.
And then thanks to Garrett says, this feels good, man. We were so bad just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Mike is the man. I'm ready to win for the next seasons to come. Go Warchant and go freaking Noles.
Amen.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Amen,
Yeah.
brother.
No, hey, by the way, guys, that I just want to piggyback off that. That is exactly what resonated with me tonight. I thought maybe I'd get mad if Florida State was number 4, because I said beforehand, my son asked me, where do you think they'll be? And I said, I don't think they can be below 3. I don't know how they could be if we're looking at resumes. And then he said, well, what if they're 4? Will you be mad? And I was like, probably. But you know what? I wasn't mad, because the longer it went on, the more I thought, this is effing awesome. I mean, look at us here watching that stupid show tonight. The only reason we are is because obviously we matter intensely. Like, we matter more than every team in the country, not named like 3 other teams. That's it. We matter more than everybody else. And that is really cool. It's been a long time since that happened. Now I just want them to get healthy and have their full allotment of weapons, get that receiving core back right, get this offensive line intact, and put your best foot forward, because I think Florida State can beat anybody in the country.
If you win the rest of them, the beauty is Michigan, Ohio State do play each other. Like, 2 of these teams play each other. So there are 5 undefeated teams left. I don't think that the odds are that these 4, 3 of these 4 teams are undefeated, or are like 4 of the 5 are undefeated. Teams lose all the time. But if that happens, the 4 undefeated teams will all be in the playoff, which is cool. That's how it should be.
But that
Corey,
never
you
happens.
mentioned that, and Gene, you mentioned that it looks like right now they by looking at this poll right now, they feel the Big Ten is the superior Power 5 conference. And Corey, you're talking about they are probably going to change their minds every single week from here on out. I do wonder if Ohio State were to beat Michigan. So let's say 1 and 2 hold serve. Ohio State wins out. They beat Michigan in the Big House. Georgia wins out. Georgia's going to play a much better team in the SEC championship game than Ohio State's going to play in the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis. They're going to play Iowa, maybe rematch Wisconsin, maybe Nebraska. I think at that point, Georgia could jump Ohio State because that final game, that final data point probably would be strong enough to overcome them. Plus, Georgia has more ranked teams here to close out their slate. They got Missouri, they got Tennessee, they've got Ole Miss. Ohio State pretty much has nobody until that final game. So
yeah, but that's not how it should be, right? I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you that it might be that way and probably will be that way, but that's not. It's supposed to be the totality of the schedule. And if Notre Dame doesn't lose again, if Penn State only loses one more time or not again, Ohio State has a win at Notre Dame and a win at Penn State, and then also will have a win at Michigan, or a win versus Michigan. Well, it would be at Michigan, I think. I think they play in the Big House this year. Yep. So it shouldn't matter what Georgia does against LSU or Alabama. You're rewarding Ohio State for the totality of the season, and their win over Michigan should carry at Michigan, in my opinion, would carry more weight than Georgia winning in Atlanta versus Alabama. Even if Ohio State scuffles in the Big Ten championship game and wins, well, let's say it's Iowa, so it's 10-0. You're still going to I don't think it's fair to then just again, that's why I hesitate on making any declarations about where we're going to be in a month, because I think you're right. I think there's a chance the committee's like, well, man, Georgia looked great. Let's bump them up. But then Ohio State would be like, well, what about us just last week beating your number 3 team in the country at their place?
To your point, if you flip-flopped Iowa and Michigan, they played them earlier, and then they played Michigan in the Big Ten championship, then suddenly it's like, then they would have probably a bigger bump than Georgia. But you're right, the timing. But again, you're assuming rational thought from the committee, and they could have a knee-jerk reaction based on.
I wonder. I'm already thinking about like 5 steps ahead. Let's say Ohio State beats Michigan, and Washington beats Oregon in the championship game, or Oregon beats Washington, whatever it is. The number 4 team is the Pac-12 team. Or the 4 teams are Ohio State, Georgia, Florida State, and let's say Washington. Do they match up Ohio State and Washington in the Rose Bowl because it's Big Ten versus Pac-10, and they want to keep it like traditional? Even though they think Georgia, Florida State probably should be 4, but they don't want Ohio State, Florida State in the Rose Bowl. They'd rather have Georgia, Florida State. And I'm just trying to think of a way I can get to Norvell.
Are you alleging shenanigans by the committee, Corey?
I want those to be the shenanigans. I want them.
I agree. They will. They know it'll help ratings. and what's going to do the fan base. They will work it out. We've seen them do it before.
Whatever
So
they
I
have
think
to
that's
do
very possible.
to make Florida State, New Orleans a thing and not fly this fan base all the way out to California would be preferable.
Well, let's hope, to your one scenario about Alabama, let's hope LSU beats Alabama this weekend, and then we don't care. We're done.
Yeah.
That takes care of a lot of the problems.